Peace, peace and blessings. Hope that everybody is doing well. Get some people a few minutes here. All right. Today, we're going to talk about holistic health. I think this is a very pertinent topic in life in general, because without health, we can't really do much of anything else. You know what I'm saying? So it's important for us as melanated people to understand what that looks like for us, what it should look like, could look like, and some of the challenges that we face and being able to get to that point, right? I'm going to begin this discussion with the simple concept of the atom, right? Reality is composed of these atoms, right? These vibrating particles. And everything in our reality, about our bodies, about the earth, is composed of these vibrating particles. And that is the scientific manifestation of that word of God, right? This essence that repeats itself and emanates through every aspect of what it is that we experience. And this is important to the African worldview, which we talked about last week, being characterized or having a theme of wholeness, right? Understanding that that everything that we're going through as individuals, as families, as a community, as a world, as, a human family, is all happening within a whole. It is one part of a whole, right? And when we're talking about this wholeness and this concept of vibration and what holds us all together, what makes reality reality, we really had to talk about this concept of ma'at. Ma'at. And ma'at takes us back to the Kemetic legacy, right? The ancient Egyptian spiritual philosophy of life. And if you look at this image here, this is a depiction of the judgment scene of Ma'at. And in the center, you can see the scale, right? And the scale is weighing a heart on the left side there against a feather. So the central point of this depiction is that when the heart is weighed against the feather, the heart should be lighter or as light as the feather. Because that would imply that that heart has been fully expressed, that heart has been fulfilled, right? So when we reach the end of our, human life, the goal is to have a light heart or to be at peace, So when we're talking about the concept of ma'at, it's all about peace, right? But let's break it down a little bit. What are the principles of ma'at? First principle of ma'at is going to be truth, right? The universal truth. That word of God, what is, Our second point is going to be justice, a system and behavior for standing up for what is right. And the next point, righteousness, is living in alignment with what is right. Right? Having integrity, doing the right thing when no one is watching, but doing the right thing because it is the right thing. Harmony. Being at harmony within ourselves, with our environments, with each other, with nature. Balance. Both sides should have the same amount. We need order, right? And there's reciprocity. What goes around comes around. What I do unto others is done unto me. So when we take a look at these 7 principles, they interconnect and are interwoven. But that gives us the understanding of this concept of ma'at. And I'll start today's conversation with the concept of ma'at because when we're talking about healing and a state of health, it really comes down to that. It comes down to, are we in alignment with God's word, right? With the laws of nature. Because when we are in that state, when we are in alignment and we're doing what's right and what is natural, our health has to align with that, right? Our mind and our body has to follow our actions and our thoughts and our words. So if we make sure that we are in alignment with the energy, that directs and constructs reality, then that is where that deepest essence of health resides. You understand? Ma'at, cosmic balance. But when we're talking about the state of black health, I think a lot of us, will think to things, may have family members or ourselves, we may have things like diabetes and hypertension, right? Stress, anxiety, fatigue, insomnia. And we just go through our day to day and we, do what it is that we got to do. But these things, these ailments continue to weigh on us. And if I had to characterize or put the state of black health into simple terms, I would put it as a hopelessness in the face of overwhelming disruption. So we live here in America, we live, under the constructions of the European worldview. And it is very disruptive to the black spirit. It's very disruptive to the black mind. And it was built on the exploitation of the black body, right? So it is natural that we face a lot of disruption and just in our environment, this disruption of our spirit. But I think we have become complacent and played into this notion of hopelessness. But the reality is that we always have what it is that we need in order to become healthy, in order to have peace, in order to be happy. It's just that we don't have that when we're living in accordance, when we're living in alignment to a system that does not serve us, right? I ask, how could a system that was built on the exploitation of the black body, right? So slavery, right? And the enslavement of African peoples and of indigenous peoples. How could that same system in today's age, right? I'm talking about that as the foundations of how we even are here, why we're here. That fundamental essence or that fundamental building block, how we talked about the atom at the beginning being the fundamental building block of reality. The fundamental building block of this system, of this matrix, right, is the exploitation of our black bodies and our black minds and our black spirit. So then how is it that today we would expect this same system to support our full state of health? That doesn't really make sense, does it? So it becomes important for us to understand, and I don't think it's that we don't understand the history, but it's important for us to make sure that we are applying it with consciousness and awareness today. There's two things that I want to talk about, as case studies to this point. First thing that I want to talk about is Henrietta Lacks. And Henrietta Lacks, without going into like full detail, was an impoverished black woman who had cervical cancer, I believe. And her cancer cells were, taken and then experimented on and used for medical development. She was never informed. Her family was never informed. They were never compensated. But yet, these medical professionals, so to speak, had stolen, her DNA. Used it for their benefit. Another example, another case study, is the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, right? Where you had impoverished African American men diagnosed with syphilis. They were never told that they were diagnosed with syphilis, but they were observed by these so-called medical professionals to see how syphilis affects the body over time. So, these are just two examples of a fundamental issue of ethics, right? The value system of the European mind is not the value system of the African mind. The African mind, that ancient mind, The value system, the code of ethics is ma'at. The value system, the code of ethics of the European mind, or the system that we live in, is the opposite of that. Chaos, deception, destruction, etc. And just to put it in more like, everyday terms, if you had a black woman, right, and you had a white woman, same hospital, same condition, next door to each other, could you honestly say to me that those two women would receive the same treatment? Would you be able to say without a doubt in your mind that both of those women would receive the same treatment? I don't think that you could. And we know these things, but yet, we live these lives that we live. We make the choices that we make. We go to the doctor and get diagnosis. They give us a prescription. We go to the pharmacy and get our prescription. We take our medicine. And we continue to live our lives. And for most people, in the same ways and with the same behaviors and habits that led to the diagnosis that we suffer from. So there's a fundamental issue, and I think that that fundamental issue has a lot to do with the mind, right? But let's take a second to define, this concept of holistic health, right? What does that mean, right? If we're talking about, this concept of wholeness and ma'at, and, we know that the current medical system isn't really set up to heal us in the best of ways. How can we approach this concept of holistic health? I break it down in this way, right? One aspect of holistic health is the spiritual health. This is one's connection to something higher than themselves, one's connection to that code of ethics, and this force, this energy higher than one's self, higher and greater than one's individual life, right? So, that can be manifested as, a Christian person. It could be manifested as a Buddhist, right? It could be manifested as someone who practices nature-based spirituality. But the point is a connection to more than just yourself in an intentional way, right? That has to do with some code of ethics and values. Another aspect to holistic health is going to be our mental health, right? This is the state of our mind. Within that greater context of reality, who am I? What do I think? What have I experienced? How do I think about myself? What stories play in my head? And are these things harmonious? Are these things to my best interest and to the best interest of others? And again, there are many different ways for that to manifest, but I think that there are clear distinctions between someone of a sound mind and someone of something other than that. When we talk about emotional health, this is a similar concept, but more so related to feelings, right? Sometimes these things that can't be put into words, right? And we're wrapping in concepts like the inner child and generational trauma, right? Emotional triggers. Another aspect, which is I think what a lot of people focus on, and which is the emphasis in Western medicine, and that is the physical health, right? You know, the state of your body, your diet, digestion, your immune system, right? But also things like flexibility and mobility and strength, agility, balance. How well are the physical systems of your body functioning? And are there any blockages or places of disturbance? Then we get into social relationships. So this is, how do we perceive the relationships that we have had, right? Maybe the ones that we grew up with, right? Our bloodline, our parents, our grandparents, siblings. And then, our early experiences in relationships with others, whether they be friends or intimate. And then these things develop and, we begin to notice patterns as we age and mature. But are your relationships fulfilling you? What are the themes that you notice in the different relationships that you engage in? What type of people are you around mostly? Are they nurturing you or are they draining you? And then the last area that I like to touch on in regards to holistic health is economic, right? Economics is about how well are you able to, within whatever environment that you're in, produce value and get what it is that you need, right? How well are you able to use the resources of your environment to enhance your situation and get it to what it is that you need or want? So when we take all of these areas together, the spiritual, the mental, emotional, physical, relational, and economic, that produces this experience that we have as human beings, right? And I think in the Western world, those areas are compartmentalized and separated, like we talked about last week, right? When we're approaching things from the Western epistemology or, thought, way of thought, we see that we have, we would go to a person to take care of our physical body, right? Then we would go to a psychiatrist, right? Then we would go to a relationship counselor, right? Just the way that is set up, you have to go to different types of professionals who have specialized knowledge in different areas of this experience. But if we are melanated people, African people, and the system fundamentally is set up or was set up at our exploitation and continues to be set up against our development, we really don't need to be spending our time running around, to the different symptoms, running around to identify and find out about the different symptoms of our issues. It's going to come a point in time to where we need to go within and approach it holistically. We need to have a holistic understanding. And we need to approach it from all the areas of our life. What is a state of life that represents health to me? What are the few things that I can do that can help me with all of my health issues? What are the most efficient and effective ways for me to take the issues that I have in whatever area of my life and begin to transmute them into something that I would like to experience, into something better? And when you embark on this journey of, holistic health as it relates to melanated people, black people, and you begin doing this research, I think that you will come across either of these two people pretty frequently, right? On the left here, we have Dr. Sebi, right? And Dr. Sebi was a Honduran herbalist. He speaks how, early in his life he was very angry as a child, disagreed with everything, had all these health issues, asthma. He was overweight, right, impotent. He said when he was around his 20s, 30s, he was working as a steam engineer. And while on this job, he became aware of the importance of the pH value, the pH level. And he noticed as he was working with, these machines, he was like, anytime the pH value within these machines was 7 or above, life began to form and disrupt the mechanical processes. And that sent him down, his path of learning about herbs, specifically alkaline herbs or herbs that have a pH value of 7 or above. But, Dr. Sebi is known for healing diseases and conditions that are thought to be uncurable within the Western medicine, right? And similarly, Dr. Lila Africa, who is the gentleman on the right here, was an herbalist, of the same kind. Really emphasized the importance of the foods that we're eating and the importance of the herbs to treat these conditions. And Dr. Lila Africa has a book on holistic medicine, right? Giving us the herbal remedies to, again, various conditions. And there are many other people, today who are beginning to and continuing the work of these elders, but my point in bringing them up is this concept of food as healing, right? What it is that we put in our bodies, right? If it is life-giving or if it came from and was produced from and is sustained by the forces of nature in the most organic way, that is the best thing for us to be eating. And I don't think that, many of us need to be told this. Which brings me back to the point that I was saying, I don't think it is so much an issue that we don't have what it is that we need to be healthy, or we don't know what it is that we need to do to be healthy. The issue is that the system that we live in and our complacency within that system creates so much friction when you try to transition into your state of fullness. Because again, going by the nature of the system, you aren't supposed to be whole. You aren't supposed to be healthy, because fundamentally this system was built at the exploitation of your body, your mind, and your spirit. It's no different today. So that's what I'm saying. It's fine for us to go to these doctors and go to these professionals, get the diagnosis. But at what point, for those of us who are wanting to experience something better, something different, are we going to go within and bring all these things together to a holistic approach? Shape our lives in such a way to where it's moving us closer to nature rather than closer or deeper under, this system that doesn't benefit us. And that's a psychological shift that has to take place. And over, the past 5 years, I've been engaging with this concept of holistic health. I've been observing my life and my experiences, and just understanding how can I get more in alignment with nature so that I'm experiencing something greater. And granted, I would say that I haven't had many physical ailments that a lot of other, black people may experience, like diabetes or hypertension. But things like stress, anxiety, insomnia, you know, I've had asthma. And I went on this journey of like, how do I begin to understand how to get rid of these things, right? Not having to take medicine all the time. What am I missing in my life that is constantly prompting this disturbance to reappear, to reoccur, right? If you have this chronic disease or you have this disorder with chronic symptoms, that means through the cycles of your body and the cycles of nature, that same misalignment keeps showing up and keeps showing up and keeps showing up. And a lot of the medicines out there are really only treating the symptoms. But then what about the side effects? Are you healing or are you switching out some symptoms for different ones, or some symptoms for side effects? At what point do we turn to nature? But along this time, I've come to the concept and my understanding of holistic health and all of those different areas that we talked about, right? The spiritual, the mental, the emotional, the physical, the social, and the economic. I've come to understand it in this way. The embodied ecological experience. So the word embodied implies, right, a physical body. Ecological refers to an ecology or a environment, whether that be material or more mental, spiritual in nature, but really, the union of the two, your environment, and then experience, or in other words, your consciousness, your self-awareness, your understanding of where you exist within your body and where your body exists within your environment. So the embodied ecological experience becomes a framework, for me at least, to simply observe myself as it relates to nature, right? As it relates to the concept of ma'at that we talked about, right? The cosmic balance of the universe, the laws of nature, the word of God. So, for example, I go to a party, right? And I'm at this party, and the environment is composed of loud noises, a lot of people, a lot of stimulation of, the senses, which kind of brings me into my body, right? My body is sensing these different things. But then going deeper into my experience, going deeper into my mind, how I'm feeling. I'm like, you know what? I'm feeling kind of tense. Not really enjoying myself. I would rather be in fresh air. I would rather be in more of a open space, more of a quiet space. So then with that understanding of my environment, how my body was reacting to that environment, and my experience of that and what I desire to experience instead, I can then make the informed decision to leave the party and go somewhere more peaceful. Another example, I've had a stressful week at work, right? And I'm noticing that I'm either very distant from the people in my household or very frustrated and very short fuse, right? So when I'm observing my social environment, and I'm like, well, I really, that's not how I would like to be, so what's going on? So then I would take attention to my body, right? Because a lot of times we're not paying attention to our body, right? I take the time to sit there and I feel my body, right, from head to toe. I'm like, you know what? My face is it's very tight, my jaws, and I feel like I'm frowning a bit. And my shoulders are very tense and sore, right? So then I may engage in some self-soothing, right? I may do some breathing. And then as I'm observing my experience, right, reflecting on how it is that I feel now, you know what? I'm in a lot better of a mood. So now I would have the wisdom, I'm gonna have the knowledge, okay, if I have a stressful week, since I value the people around me and my social environment and I want to be pleasant in that environment, let me make sure that any time I've had a stressful week, a stressful day, that I take the time to observe my body and, loosen up. In that example, if I were to never observe my body and I were to continue to just be in that irritated state because I'm stressed and, wound so tightly, not only would I run the potential of damaging permanently these relationships that I truly value when I'm in a state of ma'at, but I would run the danger of being in chronic stress and develop something like hypertension, or develop, the abuse of substances to escape. So these are just examples of how you can apply this framework to the different things that you're experiencing. If you go and get a diagnosis from a doctor or from a psychiatrist, it's not really going to help you as much as it could until you actually take it into yourself and understand it for yourself. And another point to, the embodied ecological experience, as the image suggests, is the nervous system. The nervous system is very important because it powers everything else that's going on, right? What's happening in the brain, what's happening in the body. A lot of our ailments and a lot of our emotional mental states can be alleviated if we simply pay attention to the body and regulate our nervous system. And in terms of my experiences, my challenges, because there have been challenges, you know, just because I have an awareness of these things or I have studied these things, I definitely don't claim to be a holistic health expert, right? I'm a holistic health advocate for sure. But I'll say my experience when I, came into awareness of my environment, my experience of my environment, I noticed that it was characterized by a lot of stress and anxiety. That was my biggest ailment. That was my biggest misalignment or disorder, dis-ease. So I had to figure out how to tend to my mind. I had to figure out how to tend to my spirit and my emotions. I had never done that before, right? And I picked up, different tools along the way. Therapy definitely helped, counseling, right? But journaling was really big and is still really big. A lot of times I would journal about, this from the framework of the embodied ecological experience. I would journal from that state of mind or from that way of thinking, without, before I put the name to it. But I'll be like, I did such and such today and I felt like this and I noticed that my body feels this way and I feel this way about it, right? Just spending that time with myself has brought me, I really can't put like a a value on it, or I can't tell you the amount. I can't put a quantity to the healing that has come from that. But it's definitely been great. But I would say that my challenges come into play with the physical health. I'm pretty consistent when it comes to like engaging with herbs and drinking teas. It's something that I just enjoy. But in terms of the consistently eating plant-based or transitioning fully to, a plant-based diet, I enjoy it, and I get joy from experimenting with new flavors and new things. But then it becomes a thing of the convenience of it all. And that is the biggest danger of this system that we live in, is the convenience towards the things that are not healthy. Right? So it definitely takes a lot of effort and discipline to do something different than what, the system would have you to do, or where the system would guide you to. And my point in this is that everybody has to deal with that challenge, For someone with more physical manifestations of disorder or disharmony, right? You know, obesity, for example, or yeah, obesity, right? and this person wants to lose weight and gain muscle. Well, obviously they have to go to the gym and they have to eat right. But that comes with the challenge, right? But really the thing about, working out, right? They say no pain, no gain, right? The way that muscle is built, it has to be torn. Like there are micro, when you're lifting weights, right? And you're pushing yourself to the limit. You're lifting heavy weights, or you're lifting for a certain amount of reps and you begin to experience fatigue. Micro tears happen in those muscles. And the soreness that you feel is your body sending the nutrients and secreting, the hormones that are responsible for repairing your muscle, right? Repairing your muscle in a state that is more adapted to the stress that you put on it, right? Which may come in the form of more endurance or more size, right? Right, and then this person has to eat less than what they usually eat. It would probably be ideal for them to eat cleaner than they usually eat. And as they're going through this, exertion of energy, right, they're burning calories. So they have to burn more calories than they eat. And over time, and really over quite, I would say, it seems today like long periods of time, right? Like a few years or, 6 months is when we really start to see these profound changes in these daily actions, these daily disciplines, right? So I think with the speed of, how today functions and the convenience around us, it definitely adds a level of a challenge when it comes to being disciplined towards our health. And to me, that's a mental thing. That's a psychological thing around motivation and willpower, and that's where I've had to direct the most of my energy, like I said, towards healing myself from the imposter syndrome. Right? There's an inferiority complex built into this system that prompts us to exist as imposters, to believe that we can't be a certain way or that we aren't great and never will be great. Right? So we're walking around with these subconscious impressions, but in reality, if we were to tap into our ability to align ourselves with nature, if we were to activate our melanin by aligning with nature, by going for a walk, by journaling and meditating and observing our body, by, having a cup of tea every day, right? By exercising, by eating fruits, you know. Then that voice of God, then that code of Ma'at would just begin to, radiate from our nervous system, right? And if every day we cling to that energy, we cling to those laws, right? Every day we can cling to these principles in some shape or form, we will move in the direction of health. But the important thing is, if we continue to cling to what the system would give us as melanated people, as black people, we will continue to be underdeveloped and suboptimal. Only through our eyes, only through our state of mind, only through our true essence as natural beings can we even begin the process of healing. True healing. You know what I'm saying? So that's what it's about. But that's what I have for you all today in terms of this concept of holistic health. So let me know if there are any questions. I'll leave a few minutes here for anybody that has any questions to type them. In terms of how to regulate the nervous system, the easiest way is through what's called psychosomatics, right? So, psycho relates to the mind, right, and the nervous system, and somatic relates to feeling, right, the feeling of the body. So, psychosomatic healing becomes engaging in activities that bring our mind into our body. A good way to regulate your nervous system is to go walk outside and be in nature and breathe. But breath is probably the most simple and the most accessible way for everyone. Like to take a deep breath, right? And when breathing, it's important to breathe into the stomach, right? The diaphragm, right? But I like to aim when I'm breathing, I like to imagine myself breathing, you know, for lack of a better word, like into into my nuts. Like that's the area of the body that, you know, I imagine to really get the deepest breath that I can, right? But really thinking about breathing into like your lower stomach, in that area. And what I like to do is breathe into that area for, 4 seconds, for example, and breathe out for, twice as many seconds, right? So if I breathe in for 4 seconds really deep into the stomach, breathe out for 8 seconds and really like force that breath out, or like really, really strain to make sure there's no breath left. And like breathing in that way, or doing different breathing techniques, like square breathing is another technique where, for example, I would breathe in for 8 seconds. I would hold that for 8 seconds. I would breathe out for 8 seconds. And I would relax for 8 seconds and repeat that. Another way to regulate the nervous system is to self massage, right? Like massage your temples, massage, your jaws, right? Your shoulders. I really enjoy Tai Chi because, it incorporates the movement as I'm breathing. I like moving meditation because it's a bit challenging for me to sit still and meditate. But the main thing around regulating the nervous system is about presence in the body. That is what a regulated nervous system feels like. So anything that brings you to that, you may be, an artist or a singer, for example, right? So really singing and feeling your voice reverberate, right? As far as Dr. Sabi's teachings, I would say the issue, when it comes to Dr. Sebi is that I think that there's a lot of disorganization, and probably intentionally around the true essence of his work. I try to find his videos on YouTube, and maybe I'll be able to. I'll after I end the live, I'll link a playlist to just interviews of him. I like to listen to Dr. Sebi, listen to him actually speaking to get an idea of his philosophy. But when it comes to Dr. Lila Africa, he does have the book, and I'll link that up in the description. I haven't read it myself. I've looked through it. But as far as this space goes, like it is a classic. So I would recommend their work just based off of me watching their videos and listening to their philosophy, the way that they speak and think about it. But but yeah, I mean, if there's no other questions, we can close out today here. In the description, I do have my free journaling prompts and my ebook on defeating anxiety and depression through art. And as far as regulating the nervous system goes, like these are two elements that definitely have helped me, right? The act of journaling and the act of creating art intentionally, or creating art with the intention to process, you know, lingering emotions or reoccurring thought patterns, you know, processing old relationship experiences, things like that, right? But yeah, so I'll make sure to link up Dr. Sebi and Dr. Lila Africa, some of their resources in the description. But with that said, wishing you all peace and blessings and ma'at. And yeah, may everybody engage in their healing journey as they need to and hear the voice of God in the ways that they do to be able to guide them to whatever it is that you need, right? All right, so peace and blessings.